What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Trapfish Aquatics. Today we're going to be doing a species spotlight of the betta fish, or the beta fish, or the Siamese fighting fish, whichever you prefer to call it. I've heard all of them, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. So the betta, of all aquarium fish, the betta is probably the #2 most popular fish, right behind the common goldfish. This fish is a favorite among many due to its beauty, long flowing fins, and their relatively easy and simple care. However, due to its popularity and its ability to be sold very quickly for a reasonable amount of money, it has led to some poor conditions that these fish are kept in while waiting for their forever home in the store. As you can see right here, I have my rack that I built for my wife. This is a 10-gallon betta rack. Each 10-gallon tank houses one betta, and there's actually 2 more tanks below these 2 that you cannot see, but I'll post a picture of the whole rack right here so you can see the whole thing when I first built it. And each one of these tanks has its own filtration, its own heater, its own plants, and its own betta in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a breakdown of the species that we're going to be talking about today, which is the Betta Splendens. And the Betta Splendens are the fish that are most commonly seen in the aquarium industry today. You also have the Betta Plakat, which is more closely related to the wild betta type, where it doesn't have necessarily as long finnage. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about the Betta Splendens. The common names for these fish are the betta, the beta, the Siamese fighting fish, and then you have all of these subcategories of these fish, like the crown tail, the veil tail, the half moon, the king betta, and all the different kinds they have like that. There's tons of them out there now, so you guys can pick whatever you want. The care level for these fish is very easy. These are great beginner fish. If you're considering getting your first aquarium and you only have room for a 5 or a 10-gallon aquarium, one betta is going to do great in that size tank. So they're great beginner fish. The size of these fish, on average, 2.5 inches is the absolute maximum size that you're going to see these fish grow to. Water conditions, water pH, you're going to need 6 to 7.5, so a very wide range of pH is available for these fish to be happy, and you can actually go higher than 7.5. My water out of the well usually comes out 7.6 to 7.7, but it also comes out lower sometimes, so these guys are going to be okay in that range, or a little bit outside is also going to be good as well. Temperature for these guys, 75 to 80 degrees, so you are going to need an aquarium heater. These guys absolutely need that. So make sure you have one. I see a lot of people go out and they see the betta in a cup and they're like, oh, I'm going to get it a vase or a bowl, something a little bit bigger, and give them a little bit more room. But they still need other requirements like filtration and heat, so you have to make sure you're providing that for your fish to be healthy. Water hardness, 5 to 20 degrees hardness, so moderately hard to very hard. These guys are going to do well in. They can have a little bit softer water too, but you don't want to really swing it around too much from soft to hard back and forth, so make sure you're keeping your water conditions stable. Lifespan, 3 to 5 years on average. I have seen fish go 9 years, but on average, based on genetics, with how much these fish are bred to get different varieties and things like that, 3 to 5 years is average. Right now there's a very predominant issue with fish getting tumors, specifically betta fish getting tumors and shortening their lifespan due to the overbreeding and genetics being passed along. So 3 to 5 years average. The origin of these fish, right now all of the fish, 99% of the fish that you're going to see in the United States in the aquarium hobby are fully domesticated and bred here. But originally these fish were from Thailand, and they come from ponds, streams, and slow-moving waters, such as rice paddies. A lot of farmers would go catch bettas and put them in their rice paddies, or if the rivers overflowed, the bettas would naturally end up in the rice paddies, and that really helps mosquito control and things like that, because the bettas will eat those little worms and parasites and things like that to keep them out of the rice. So one thing I do want to talk about here is A lot of people like to point out that betta fish are labyrinth fish. They do breathe their oxygen from the water, or not from the water, from the surface of the water. So they don't need a lot of current, hence the slow-moving waters of their natural area. Now, one thing you do want to consider, and people tell me this all the time, is bettas have adapted the ability to live in minute volumes of water. And yes, they've adapted to survive in those small amounts of water, not thrive. So I actually had a conversation with a gentleman once who said that it's better to keep them in small volumes of water because that's what they prefer. And I was trying to argue the point that these fish naturally come from streams and rivers as well as very large rice paddies. So granted, the volume of water may be only a foot deep, but the volume of water is probably over an acre in size. So there's lots of more water there. So I said basically what he's telling me is the equivalent of, I have two 10-gallon aquariums. This one is 10 gallons full of water, and this one only has 1 gallon of water in it. And he was saying that the fish that was living in 1 gallon of water would prosper more than the fish that was living in 10 gallons, which is absolutely not true. There are lots of variables to that. You know, you could take better care of this one than this one. This one might have a disease that this one doesn't, so on and so forth. But in general, the more water that you have, the better off your fish is going to be, and the healthier your fish is going to be. So make sure you're providing enough water for your fish and enough volume of water. Just because they're sold in small cups and just because people say that they've adapted to live in small environments doesn't mean that they should. They've adapted because they struggled to get to that point to be able to survive. We want our fish to thrive, so that's my rant over. Temperament of these fish: peaceful with the right tank mates. Generally with snails and things like that, these guys are fine. With like autosynclists, these guys are good. You basically want to avoid any fish that are fin nippers, right? Because if you put, say, let's go cherry barbs, right? Cherry barbs I know are fin nippers. If you put cherry barbs in here, they're going to nip the betta's fins. But if you take guppies and put them in here, where guppies are relatively peaceful, guppies have large finnage as well, the male bettas and female bettas are going to see that as a threat, and they're going to nip their fins. So it's back and forth on fin nipping, so you want to be very careful what fish you put in here. Generally, like zebra danios and things like that are usually pretty good. White clouds, if you keep the temperature on these guys around the 76 range, 77, white clouds are going to do pretty well with them. So there are certain fish that do well, and there's also other fish that do not do well at all. Now, as far as breeding, breeding can be done, but you want to be very, very careful. If you're not experienced with breeding bettas, my suggestion would be go online, look up videos specifically on how to breed betta fish. There's lots of them out there, and really familiarize yourself with the process, because you can't just put a male and a female together and expect them to instantly lay eggs. The female has to be conditioned, the female has to be ready to be able to breed, and the male has to be at a mature enough level to where he's creating a bubble nest, and you have to introduce them slowly so you know that they're not just going to kill each other. So it is a very delicate process. Make sure you familiarize yourself. It can be done, but be prepared to have those little cups that they come in. Get a lot of them, because if they have 100 fry, you're going to need 100 cups to separate them. Otherwise, they're going to try to kill each other. So be prepared if you plan on breeding bettas. Tank size, absolute bare minimum, and I'm talking bare minimum, 5 gallons. Has to be 5 gallons, bare minimum. 10 gallons is way better. I see people keeping them in 1/4 of a gallon, half a gallon, 1 gallon tanks. That's just not enough room. You need 5 gallons bare minimum. 10 gallon is even better, right? Now, you want low flow. You want to make sure you have plants or something that they can rest on close to the surface so that they can rest and breathe, because the big fins that they have trying to swim around, it consumes a lot of energy. So we want to make it as easy on our fish as possible to give them a happy, healthy life. Now, food, bettas are carnivorous, which means you can feed fish flakes, frozen foods, live foods, brine shrimp, bloodworms, Daphnia, mysis shrimp, all that stuff. Perfect. Excellent fish foods. These guys get bloodworms as well as a dry pellet. And on the occasion when I'm hatching out brine shrimp, if I have extra ones, these guys are the ones that get them. Now, one thing I do want to note on with them being carnivorous is these guys do tend to get swim bladder issues. So if you see a betta with a swim bladder issue and you look online how to fix it, a lot of people talk about, oh, you can feed peas. Do not feed a betta fish peas. Their digestive system is not set up to handle vegetables and plant-based matter. They're carnivorous. If you want to help a betta fish with a swim bladder issue, Daphnia is the absolute best thing you can feed them. Daphnia works as a diuretic and it will clean them right out, no problems at all. So that's the way to go for that. Tank region, generally these guys are going to hang around mid to top. Like I said before, you want to keep them plants up there so they can stay close to the surface so that they can breathe without a lot of extra work put in on their part. As far as determining gender for these fish, males generally much more colorful and have much longer finnage overall over their whole body. But if you're looking more into younger fish, they don't necessarily have longer fins from the male to the female. So one of the easier ways to tell is the pectoral fins. Males will have much longer pectoral fins than the females will. Now for females, when they reach closer to maturity, they will get an egg spot under their belly. It's a little white dot. So you'll be able to see that from the side. Also, females, when they're getting closer to a mature state, are going to get horizontal lines. Now, I have a female betta here. I'll get a picture of her. She's blue and she has white lines. So you'll be able to see that. And that's kind of how you can determine a male and female if it hasn't already been done for you. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching Traffish Aquatics, and I will see you guys in the next video.